Yo,
What's up, brother? How we doing today, man?
doing pretty good, man. Should be a pretty good show. My boy Johnny Signorella and Kevin Perry. This is another episode of Kayonation Boxing, and we got some good stuff to talk about today. We're gonna go over recap Spence versus Garcia. That was the big fight this last weekend. Give me some a little bit of background on what you saw. We know Spence came off that vicious accident that he went through, and he put on a pretty good performance. Give me a little bit of your thoughts on that, John.
I think better than ever, and it was great to see that. I've always been an Earl Spence fan. Seeing him come off of that, terrible, terrible car crash, and a year later during COVID, survive and actually thrive in a boxing competition against one of the top players at 147. Now, Danny Garcia, we know, no disrespect, not to poo-poo on him. He's not a world beater. Every single time he steps up to high-level opposition, we look back to Keith Thurman. We look back to many other people, even Mauricio Herrera, I thought won that fight when he broke, in my opinion, Danny Garcia's nose in the 12th round. So not to take anything away from the amazing accomplishments that Earl Spence did by beating someone like Danny Garcia, who's very beatable at the high level when he faces the high level. But for me, what Earl Spence did, recovering, listen, he made a mistake. Luckily, he did not get hurt. He got hurt, but he didn't, get tremendously hurt where it's career and life-changing. Luckily, he did not hurt anyone and on the road that night. No pedestrians, no animals or anything that we know of course, right? So the fact that he was able to put himself in great conditioning mentally and physically, and look at his shape going into that fight. I don't know if you noticed it, Kev. I'm going to ask you this question. He looked leaner and he just looked better to me.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting you say that. Actually, when I saw some of the shots of the weigh-in and stuff before the fight, I mean, he looked really lean. So it was kind of a little bit, how would you say?
Concerned. I was concerned.
Concerned that he might be a little bit overtrained, but he definitely looked excellent. And I kind of pretty much saw what he normally does. He goes in there, and my whole perception was, is he going to box or is he going to go out there and slug it out? And I thought he kind of mixed a little bit of that stuff in there, and he had Danny confused pretty much the whole time. He used his jab real good. He was doubling up on the jab. He would kind of keep Danny Garcia at a range where Danny Garcia could not really counter him all that effectively. You could see, though, Garcia was making some little adjustments here and there as the fight went on. He had some pretty good jabs to the body. He was kind of trying to get into the fight, and I kind of saw what Spence did was, once you saw Garcia kind of gaining a little bit of ground, he took it away. He would go inside and he'd dig those nasty body shots. He'd be moving at certain angles where Garcia would have to reset a lot. So it was definitely very impressive from what I saw, and I was very impressed. And obviously, before the fight started, you were just a little bit concerned that the accident was gonna have somewhat of an effect. I didn't really see it, but he did say at the end of the fight he got a little bit tired in the last maybe 3-4 rounds, but obviously the amount of pressure and volume he was doing, I mean, that was going to happen. So I was very impressed overall by the performance.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I was concerned about a couple things going in. The obvious, the accident that we all talk about, and it's, excuse me, highly documented. And another thing is, too, going into the fight, like we saw at the weigh-in, like you mentioned, great point. When I saw him look so lean, I was like, maybe did he overtrain for this? Maybe did he want this too much because of how much he has to prove? And psychologically, that had to have a big factor on him, because we all know, guys out there, when we had our drunken nights and we do something stupid, let's face facts. We've all done things stupid, but you get depressed afterwards, especially if you're going to do something like, unfortunately, Earl Spence was involved in, where you could almost die or kill somebody. Those are high consequences. He's a human being. So I was wondering if he was trying too hard. And then I noticed, like you said, you hit a great point there when you mentioned about he would tire later on down the stretch, no matter what. Because, again, like I was mentioning, this is an Earl Spence that we had seen last Saturday night that was probably the most aggressive he's ever been, and against the top guy. He tried to get Danny Garcia out of there. He didn't let him get off the hook. Like you said, he had a great jab. He was going down to the body. He was cutting the ring off. Danny Garcia did not want to engage. Once he realized, okay, this is not, a post-mortem accident victim in Earl Spence here. This is a guy that's highly motivated and highly capable of, coming to fight tonight. And once Danny Garcia sniffed that out in about the second or third round, the fight changed. And I think, my boy Billy C said this yesterday when I did a show with him. He had it pretty much a sweep, all 12. Now, I gave Danny 2 rounds, but it goes to show you with Spence, I mean, you look at this, he won at least 10 rounds of that fight. Some arguably could be all of them. And, picking up right where he left off a year prior, right, a month before his accident, he fought Sean Porter. I would love to see them run that back. That was very close. Obviously, the world wants Terrence Crawford and Spence, but there's at least 4 fights at welterweight. I should say 4 fighters at welterweight that are the most intriguing to me. The aforementioned Earl Spence, Terrence Crawford, Sean Porter, and of course, even though he's old, Manny Pacquiao. I mean, he put a whooping on Thurman. Yeah. So, let's see what we get, Kev.
Yeah, it was definitely it was one of those where there was it wasn't the greatest fight in the world, but there was definitely a lot of intrigue there. Congratulations to Errol Spence on defending his 2 titles he has with the IBF and the WBC welterweight crowns.
Yep. And big congratulations, big ups. I mean, even though it was a self-inflicted condition he put himself in with, throwing, himself in the harm's way, reckless abandonment. People make mistakes, but it's how you recover. Like the great Evander Holyfield says, it's always about how you recover. Again, luckily nobody got hurt. I mean, he obviously suffered some lacerations and all that, but to come back from that kind of, again, the psychology, I'm no psychologist, but just, to go back to that level, and during COVID, where there's not a lot of marquee names willing to fight, this man put himself back in condition. And, I don't know if he still drinks or not. I mean, everyone's unable to have a drink here and there if that's okay with their health and they can keep it together. But I really think that he's been on the straight and narrow. And I expect very good things from Earl Spence. Let me ask you a question, Kev. What do you think happens? Okay, now these are all hypotheticals. We're going to go hypothetical round. Earl Spence, based on what you saw and what you saw from Terrence Crawford the last time Crawford fought, who do you this is the fight everyone wants to talk about. Who do you think would win that fight?
I don't know. It's kind of hard to say because I think both guys need I want to see Terrence Crawford in there with another top welterweight, not somebody like Kell Brook, where Brook hadn't fought at the weight for a while. I want to see him fight somebody like a Sean Porter, and then I want to see Errol Spence fight Manny Pacquiao, and then I think the fight. I know people are really complaining about these guys not fighting, but right now with the pandemic going on, I think both guys need to build their profile a little bit. I really think it's a little bit premature. I understand people's they're very eager to see it, but I don't think either guy is very well known to the mainstream. So I definitely think so. For example, if Errol Spence winds up beating Manny Pacquiao and he does an impressive fashion, that will make him a much bigger star, and it'll make the fight with him and Terrence Crawford a much bigger fight. So I think people need to be a little bit, have a little bit more patience, and obviously with the amount of money that both guys are feel that they deserve for the fight, I think it needs to be built up slightly a little bit more. Obviously, this last weekend he had 19,000 fans, but I think once, hopefully, when it gets to a point where we can have fans in the arenas, in any arena where there's more options. I think we need to kind of wait till the end of 2021 for that fight, and people need to just kind of settle down with their eagerness. I think it's going to happen. Um, but obviously, if they do fight, I'm kind of leaning a little bit towards Terrence Crawford, just for the fact that he's been very impressive in all of his fights. I mean, he's lost a couple of rounds here and there, but the rounds he's lost has been more rounds where he was kind of trying to figure out his opponent. He would just kind of like Tim Bradley would say, using his computer or computing, just trying to figure out what his opponent's going to do. And once he figures you out, I mean, he takes you out. So
he's a master of the downloading the content. Like, you could see it even in his last fight with Cal Brock. You saw it with Terrence Crawford. Like, after 2 rounds, you all of a sudden saw this, different guys. Like, I got you, bro. I know how to beat you. And I like your scenario of a kind of like, a tournament, if you will. Like Terrence Crawford versus Sean Porter. That's an amazing test, because Sean Porter, first of all, I love him. And by the way, guys, one of the best dressed people.
Sean Porter is like the truth machine for a fighter. So if you can beat him, then that really shows a lot, because he's not going to let you kind of take any breaks.
And he's a great commentator, and you also one of the best dressed people on the planet, brother. But outside of all that, he's a hard ass fighter, like you said, man. He's like a linebacker. He will press you, and sometimes it's sloppy, sometimes it's crazy, sometimes it's supremely unorthodox tradition, but it works for him, And all the fights that he's lost, he's pretty much been in the conversation of those fights. And I think we haven't seen the best Sean Porter yet, which is scary to think about. So if we happen to get the best Sean Porter against Terrence Crawford, I like Porter's style. I'm not saying he's going to beat Terrence Crawford.
Can I add something to just the original question that you
go ahead?
Yeah. Who I think is going to win? I think that the most intriguing thing about that fight to me is the style that Errol Spence has. He's going to make Terrence Crawford have to fight. That's my assumption. And Terrence Crawford is such a slow starter that I think that might be where you're going to figure out if Terrence Crawford's going to beat him. If Errol Spence can kind of do what he does to most opponents, where he controls them with the jab, he's usually in control as far as like the punch output, and he can kind of keep Crawford's hands at home, where Crawford is always having to think about what Errol Spence is doing. I think that's the intrigue in the fight, where if Errol Spence can consistently do that with not getting hit by Terrence Crawford, and Terrence Crawford is hands are at home a lot, that's where I think he can win the fight. If you let Crawford kind of give him too much time to kind of download the information, then that's where I think Errol Spence will be in a little bit of trouble. But he's obviously the bigger welterweight. The weight issue, as far as Errol Spence, if he makes the weight comfortably, because he seems like he's really about to be out of the weight class. I mean, I don't know if he's struggling to make weight, but he seems like real thin for like his frame. So
very thin.
I only see 2 more fights for him at welterweight. So I think definitely fighting Manny Pacquiao first would be. I mean, it would be terrible if he lost, obviously. But
stylistically, I think that Porter is a little bit better of an opponent for Terrence Crawford, because his bullying style, the aggression, you can't really, it's not traditional. So Terrence Crawford, we talk about downloading content. He's very traditional. He could read things that are done in the boxing dictionary and encyclopedia. Sean Porter, that stuff doesn't exist. It's only Sean Porter, his encyclopedia, his dictionary. I think it would be a great fight between the two of them. I'd like to see that. Obviously, for me, I think Terrence Crawford would ultimately take out Spence in regard to that fight. I think it would be an amazing fight. I think it'd be great for boxing. I do agree with you that Errol Spence and Manny Pacquiao would be great. So if we have a dream world scenario, guys, we're talking about the dream world of boxing. Okay, for the diehards. Right now I'm going to have to agree with Kevin with what he was saying is that I think Terrence Crawford versus Sean Porter and Spence versus Pacquiao, those are the fights at 147. Those are the four guys. I mean, there's other guys there. There's people coming in. We all know about that. But these are the ones that are going to make the world go round. And if they're going to charge pay-per-view, these are the fights that we will pay for.
Yeah, because I mean these last few pay-per-views, you know me. I mean, I'm not buying them. I mean, I'm not buying, but I would but I would pay for Pacquiao and Errol Spence.
Hell yeah!
That's kind of a passing of the torch.
Take my money.
And Terrence Crawford. I'll probably pay for that, or you know what? I'll make you pay for it. I'll
come over to the house. Yeah. You bring beer. I'll pay for the fight.
But that's I guess it depends. If it's $100, I don't know, but 75, I think in that range seems a little bit more reasonable.
Yeah, man.
But anyways, great fight by Spence this weekend. Danny Garcia. I mean, where does he go from here? Just briefly, give me 30 seconds where you think what's his next move?
Gatekeeper for whoever's coming in, the up and coming.
Should he just hang it up or what?
No, he could still make money. He could do his 2 fights a year. I think at this point he's going to be ended up being a gatekeeper, like whoever's coming up.
How about Garcia versus Garcia? What do you think about that?
It's interesting in the title in itself, but Mikey Garcia. I don't know. I mean, Danny Garcia could hit really hard. Mikey's got a good set, skill set to him. So it's an interesting fight. I think that honestly, it's a fight that it would probably make the most sense for both of them in a lot of ways, because I don't consider I don't consider Mikey Garcia a natural 147 pounder. But Danny Garcia, I do. And I think Danny Garcia is used to fighting at that weight. He was better at 140. There's no mistaking about that. But I just think that Danny would have the advantage. And I don't know if Mikey gets hurt in that fight, though. And Danny's best opportunity would be to stop him, right? So, because one thing about Mikey, he's showing great skill set, but he also has a good chin, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. But anyways, What's the next topic here?
Well, for me, I'm looking forward to Canelo versus Smith coming up at the end of December. I think it's the biggest fight in the calendar. Yes, we do have Joshua and Pulev this weekend, but Canelo, when Canelo fights, it's one of those big events, and the best part is that it's not on pay-per-view. Which, I mean, the fans have been fleeced lately, right? I mean, you look at all the things that have been going on with the Jones and Tyson. Yes, it was entertaining, and the Spence and Garcia. Yes, it was entertaining, but it's like during these times, especially, and one pay-per-view after another. Now, Kevin, I get that they can't make the money in a lot of cases with no fans in attendance. In a lot of cases, some cases we do have attendance. But like we did last weekend, we had attendance, and it was still on pay-per-view. So here we go, getting fleeced by the fans. The Zone, cool. Finally, a really good fight. My thoughts is that, look at what Canelo's done recently, man. I mean, running through different weight classes, what was it? Back in November of 2019 when he laid out Sergey Kovalev, and before that, he got a unanimous decision against Jacobs.
No, let me cut you off there. So that fight with Kovalev was kind of how would you say this?
He dropped a missile on his head.
No, it was smoking. That fight was smoke and mirrors to me, and I'm going to tell you why. Kovalev was coming off a very difficult fight against Anthony Yard, where he almost got knocked out, and then Yard just ran out of gas and got KO'd. And then they signed that fight. I think Kovalev didn't even have any time to actually get any rest in between the fights.
That's great matchmaking on behalf of Canelo.
Yeah. So that was one of those where, and then Kovalev kind of fought in a very defensive manner the whole time. I mean, Kovalov used to be considered just like a killer. And then all of a sudden he's fighting Canelo, a naturally smaller guy, and he's just sitting there throwing jabs. I mean, I never saw him throw a right hand at all. I mean,
no, there was no right hand at all in that fight.
That was, I wouldn't, Smith, I think, is going to be a more formidable opponent. The only problem with Smith is in a similar situation to Kovalov. Hasn't had a whole lot of time to prepare. I heard he's been in the gym for anticipating that he was going to get this payday, along with probably 5 or 6 other fighters. So we don't know how much he's been in the gym, but according to his team, he's been in the gym, he's been training. So he is going to come in prepared, but he's kind of one of those opponents where he's very tall, he's very lanky, and Canelo throws those vicious body shots. He's gotten better as far as using those earmuff defense. He comes in there and he knows how to duck and slip. And Smith's last fight against John Ryder, I mean, he just looked terrible to me. So if you had to ask me who's going to win, I mean, well, if it goes to the scorecards, I mean, you know who's going to win. So, but anyways, give me your thoughts, John.
Well, I think Canelo has been doing a great job of late. Like I said, going back and forth between weight classes, showing explosive power, taking on names. I mean, if you look at, the battery of work over the past few years, whether it's Kovalov, Jacobs, Golovkin twice, there's been guys there, of course, Miguel Cotto, you got to give props to that. That goes back a ways, but still it was an impressive victory. Now, for Callum Smith to break him down, guys, it's like you look at the last fight with John Ryder, it was okay. He didn't look impressive. Some people actually thought that Smith lost the fight. Styles makes fights. But then if you look at the prior 2 fights in front of that, including a big victory over George Groves, who obviously has seen better days, but whatever, they were KOs. The guy has power. Like you said, Kev, he has size. Callum Smith does, from a fighting family. He comes from a family that boxes, and some are better than others. There's always going to be runts in the litter, and I'm not going to name the names. But the bottom line is that this guy comes from fighting. He's in the biggest opportunity of his life. There's no doubt about it. The biggest stage ever.
Plus, John, he actually, his brother fought Canelo, so he's actually probably had some time to at least study him quite a bit over time. So,
and it's almost like a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, like, you beat up my brother, now I must get revenge. That's kind of like what it is.
One of his movies in a long time. Is that how he talks?
No, how he talks is more like in Double Impact. Never in my life would I ever wear black silk underwear.
It sounded more like Drago to me, but anyway.
I always sound Russian for some reason. And then sometimes I go like Leprechaun, and it's weird, and Irish. I'm all over the place. The only thing I could do really good is Italian over here. But I think that, Callum Smith, he's also unbeaten. He's got a decent knockout percentage. It should be interesting. I think this is one of the better, more lively opponents for, like you mentioned.
It's definitely interesting to me. The only issue I have is he just hasn't fought a whole lot of world-class opposition. So, George Groves, but we know George Groves. He got knocked out twice. I mean, viciously. The second time against Carl Froch. That first fight was kind of an early stoppage. He looked really good then, but he's kind of had his ups and downs in his career.
If you could pull that up on the screen, that'd be amazing for people to see. Like, his legs sprawled out. I mean, I don't mean to put you at extra work over there, but that is the way he fell over his leg. Oh my God! Like, look at this. Like Emmanuel Stewart would say, look at it. It's crazy.
Yeah. So it's, but besides George Groves, I mean, can you really name any legitimate world-class opponents? So, I mean, sometimes I feel some of these guys, I mean, I don't know how many fights, what his record is, but I believe he has about 20-something fights. He hasn't really fought too many top fighters, so.
He's at 27-0 with 19 KOs, but like you said, there is no top fighter outside of, George Groves, who at the time wasn't a top fighter. But respect to
And has,
George Groves. But
has he ever fought? Has he ever fought in the United States? Or I believe this fight is going to be in Texas.
this fight coming up is going to be in Texas, yeah, San Antonio. And has he ever fought in the States? Yeah, he fought at the Garden once before. Uh, Hasim Nagam rather, and that's really the extent. I mean, most of it's UK. He's traveled across. I'm going through his record right now. He's traveled across the pond once before. I mean, it's not a big stage to zone. There's a lot of factors into that. That's a great point. Like, how often did you fight in America? But it's weird because how much of a crowd do we know about? Because it's like the thing about traveling to another country is not only like how well do you acclimate or how well do you settle in, and it's also how well do the people perceive you and receive you. So if he's in an arena that's empty, which I don't think it will be, I'm just throwing out my.
I think there's going to be fans there, but I think
Right.
that part of the issue is, especially with this pandemic going on, there's so many restrictions and weird rules now. So
You don't even know what the hell to do anymore when you go out.
show up at a specific time. Then they're going to put him in some type of bubble environment that's going to probably make him very uncomfortable. I mean, to me, it's like the deck is already was stacked against him if there was no pandemic, and now there's the pandemic. I just don't see very many advantages for him here. I mean, his boxing ability, his punching power are definitely advantages that he has, his reach and his height. But if Canelo could handle somebody with the punching power of a Gennady Golovkin, I don't think Smith is going to really present anything that he hasn't seen before. And then obviously he fought Sergey Kovalev, who is a taller, rangier guy with punching power. Obviously, a guy kind of on the back end of his career, but I think that obviously makes.
Oh, that's a great point. His punch resistance.
Fights. So I mean, he's probably at this point, even including in the gym, he's seen everything. So I don't think Smith is going to present anything that's going to make him all that uncomfortable.
The punch resistance, absolutely. And he's seen it all. He faced Mayweather. I mean, he learned a lot because, I mean, we saw Canelo adapt and change after that. And then obviously there was some, questionable, wins that he got against like Israel and Lara was one of them. But, he's shown growth.
John, it's great that you brought that up. That's like invaluable experience, fighting a guy that is so difficult to fight, a boxer mover, when you're somebody who likes to come forward and throw body shots, and you got a guy that's basically you're basically got to chase him down. It's like the hare and the rabbit. You know what I mean?
Yep. And speaking about
the tortoise and the hare, I'm sorry.
There you go. No, I got it. The thing is, with Canelo, I think he'll win this fight. I know that he's had great training and sparring. I happen to know someone on a very personal level, a fighter, Ronald Ellis, who's actually Ronald's going to fight this weekend on Showtime, coming out of Connecticut. The broadcast will be, he's a super middleweight fighter. He's also a sparring partner and stablemate of Canelo. And, he's going to be taking on Matev Korobov, which I'm looking forward to because that's a hell of a test for my boy Ronald. And Kev, let me just tell you about my boy Ronald. Like, his record, 17-1, 2 draws. He got 11 KOs. Here's a guy that is one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet in the sport of boxing. He's a family man. He's mad cool, funny. And he comes from a great stable of awesome people. We're talking, hangs out around Buddy McGirt, Rachel Charles, Sheer Management. And I'm not getting paid to say this, people. These are just people I love. And I've embraced them. I've become great friends with them. I've actually interviewed a lot of fighters from that stable. And Kevin, let me tell you something. This is what boxing needs more. These people are like a family. They go shopping at Target together. They go hiking together. They all go running together. They do things together. They have holiday dinners together. Like, that is what made Mike Tyson with Costamato. Emmanuel Stewart, when he took in fighters and pretty much adopted them like their sons. This is what the sport really needs. and less of the other side of the sport where it's like social media and negativity and blaming promoters or managers. Like, these are good people that are involved in the sport. So props to Ronald. I know you're going to kick ass on Saturday night, brother. I'll be on my show next week. And hopefully I have Rachel on and a lot of other fighters from that stable, because these guys are taking over because they got the right head and the right approach. Family's everything.
Word, John. So, yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to see how he does this fight. I'm not too familiar with him, but he's obviously an upcoming guy, and he's somebody that you know pretty well, and we wish him all the best. And definitely it's a good platform. I'm really looking forward to getting some of these old guys out and these new guys in. And thing with boxing, I think the problem is we really want to build these guys, but for example, I was just kind of looking at his record. I think he was 17-1-2.
That's correct. Yep.
People nowadays, they see a guy with one loss and a couple of draws and they want to write him off. I think we really need to put things in perspective, give guys opportunities. If you fight good fighters, I was looking at a guy on BoxRec earlier today, and the guy was 22 wins and 21 losses. And when I looked at the 21 losses, out of the 21 losses, of probably about like 18 of them were against undefeated guys. And he probably went the distance with all those guys. So in boxing, sometimes people can be actually like a great fighter. And they would if that guy fought 40 stiffs, he'd be 40-0. But he actually fought 20 really good, solid prospects. Probably lost all of them very, competitively. And now he's 22-20. So that makes him look like
it's the most unforgiving sport.
Yeah, it's just really ridiculous. It's like in this sport, if you don't have the right connections, you can kind of be relegated to a certain position. Some fighters are okay with just coming in there okay, I'm a solid opponent. They kind of get in the opponent mindset. They're there to get a check. They're going to do just enough not to win the fight, but people need to put things in perspective. There's a lot of great fighters who don't have shiny, glossy records, and that's the product of matchmaking, the product of who's kind of in your corner, who's managing your career. And sometimes you see big upsets because sometimes people overlook those kind of guys. There's a fighter you're probably familiar with. I'm trying to remember his name, who gave every fighter a tough fight. I'm trying to remember what his name is. Darnell Boone. You familiar with him? Mm-hmm. Similar type of guy. So when you see these upcoming guys, you see them have a loss or two, don't write them off.
No, look at guys like Mickey Ward, and give me help me out here. The Drunken Master, Augustus.
Yeah,
they put you through hell, and that's I think what Danny Garcia is going to be, but I don't think he's going to be that capable. To bookend that, I don't think Danny's going to be that guy. Like, if you went and saw towards the end of the career, you're facing Orlando Salido at his end of his career, you're still going through hell because that guy only knows how to fight one way. And whether he's got it that night or not, he's still going to bring it, and he's going to see what you have and what you don't have. So you better bring what you have to face a guy like that. So those type of guys that we're mentioning are certainly guys that are really, really tough to take out. Also, talking about bookends, the thing with Canelo, I love the way he has a hybrid now of different styles, versatility. He's got a great jab, awesome reflexes. His defense has certainly improved. He's got that explosive missile right hand that he likes to, throw out there. What I like about Canelo, I don't know if you guys ever noticed this, and this is an observation I have, is that Canelo will do things very traditionally and fundamentally. He'll do a double jab. He'll do some body shots. He'll throw a lot of straight shots, maybe some looping to the body, but not much to the head. But every once in a while, he'll just check and see if you're paying attention to an overhand right, which is like a barroom brawl shot, if you guys don't know the term. And he does that at the right time. And that to me shows intelligence and a setup in his plan. I study this man. I wanted to hate him for a lot of reasons, being the whole clenbuterol and whatever, but he's definitely earned my respect. And if you look at his method to his madness, there is certainly a method to his madness.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And that's December 19th.
Yes, correct. December 19th. And I'm looking forward to that. It's going to close out this crazy year. And, a lot of more shows to come by way of me and Kevin. And hopefully a lot of good boxing. And we're getting better, guys. We're starting to get names. So that's a start, right?
So the next one's up. This is this weekend, right?
Yep.
Joshua versus. Oh God.
Pulev. Just use that one. It's easier that way.
I'm not all that high on this bout, but obviously, I wouldn't call it a tune-up fight because I think he's a mandatory challenger to one of Joshua's titles. He's what the IBF and WBO. There's just way too many belts now.
There's too many belts. You can't keep up with it. It's impossible.
He's a legitimate heavyweight champion, and Joshua is a little bit behind him. But this is a fight that Joshua cannot afford to look lackluster. I mean, he's got to really look impressive here just because this could. So if Joshua wins here and he fights Tyson Fury, that might be one of the biggest heavyweight fights. I mean, probably the biggest heavyweight fight in UK history.
Absolutely, no doubt UK.
I mean, I could see that fight doing. Obviously in the UK it's going to be huge. It's going to
enormous. The biggest fight you can make
I don't know how many tickets it will sell in the United States as far as pay-per-view buys, but I think it could do about 1 million U.S. pay-per-view buys. I really think so.
It depends.
What do you think about? Well, actually, because I'm kind of going way beyond myself here, but what do you think about this fight with Joshua and Pulev? Do you think Pulev is going to put up a good effort, or is he just going to be the fall guy here?
Well, again, we were talking about before opportunities with Callum Smith. You have a situation where now we have a fighter in Pulev who's been there, done that. He's got the big loss and the biggest fight of his life. If you guys don't know, it was against Vladimir Klitschko back in 2014. So you have a situation where this guy gets a second chance. How many second chances do we get in life? Well, not many. Now he's got one, a big one. And I'm going to say at a very opportune time. Kev, I'm going to explain why. Outside of Klitschko, Pulev has never fought anyone. I hate to say any boxer is not anyone, but never fought like a high-class, high-quality name. Let's put it that way. But he has won all of his other fights. Yeah, pull the record up for people to see, for sure. So you got a situation where this guy comes in, and this is the second opportunity.
You want me to bring up Pulev's record? You want me to pull up?
No, I got it. But the bottom line is that this is an opportunity for him to come in and see what Joshua's like, because we got to look at now. You got the Joshua record up. Okay, guys, the first two things I want you to look at there is, well, I'm sorry, the second two and three, okay, on the list is Andy Ruiz twice. He's accustomed to facing the same fighter 2 fights in a row. Now, he made significant adjustments in the second fight, even though we had a very complacent.
He made excellent adjustments. I mean, he pretty much resorted to stinking the joint out to win. So,
right.
Which was bad for the fans, but it was great for him. It showed that he figured out what he needed to do to win the fight.
Right.
He didn't just get over anxious anytime he landed a good shot. He landed a good shot, he'd get himself out of there. He remembered what he did wrong the first fight. So that was something that showed that he grew as a fighter. Even though, obviously, if you're the first fight with him and Ruiz, I mean, that was a barn burner. So it was great for the fans. But
that was an amazing fight. I could not believe what I was seeing.
It didn't turn out too well for Anthony Joshua, though. So I understand that.
No, it really didn't. And I knew that Andy was going to bring some fireworks, but talking about this one in the first fight, at least the second fight, I was like, I don't know, man. He's eating sushi off strippers. Like, I mean, it's not a good look, dude. And you're traveling all the way from where you're at in America all the way to the Mideast. I'm like, this ain't a good look. And I had a feeling Joshua was going to win. Not taking anything away from Joshua, but here's what's up. My point is that Pulev's in a very good situation. He's getting that second chance, which is very important. And Joshua is now facing a different opponent than he had in his recent couple fights. Had a couple tough ones along the way, too.
I'm going to pull up Pulev's record real quick. Give me a little bit of an analysis on Kubrat Pulev here, his record and kind of what you see in some of his previous opponents.
He beat a lot of guys that were good guys. Like, I'm talking like Boxing After Dark guys on HBO back in the day, or, guys that were entertaining, but we're talking entertaining 10 years ago. What do I mean by that? Kevin Johnson, Samuel Peter, Chisora to a certain level. I still give that guy a lot of respect. I think he's got a lot of pop. Maurice Harris, he's beaten guys that have not really proven themselves to be great world class.
His only real significant opponent, Vladimir Klitschko, he got knocked out in 5 rounds. So
yeah, I remember that. Remember that Klitschko right hand? They had Klitschko's real quick.
He did make a pretty good account of himself.
The Klitschko's had great nicknames. The best nicknames in boxing history, in my opinion, guys, is Tommy Hearns. He had 2. The Motor City Cobra. Come on. That's one of the best ones ever. The Klitschko brothers, Dr. Iron Fist and a Steel Hammer. I mean, it's amazing, dude. The Hitman Hearns, the Motor City Cobra. I mean, those are whatever happened to good nicknames, Kevin? Where'd they go?
I like Teofimo's his nickname, the Takeover. I think that's pretty brilliant.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Definitely like kind of giving it's putting yourself out there. But that guy put himself out there, and he's pretty much almost reached the mountaintop already. So
yeah.
More power to him.
There's my thought.
The Hispanic causing panic. You remember that?
That's a good one. That's a really good one. That's a good one. So to put a bow tie on Joshua Pulev, guys, what I think is that Joshua will win. It's just intriguing in my opinion because Pulev, he's decent. He's been there. It's really a matter of how Joshua adapts to another opponent because, if you go back to watching or looking at Joshua's record or watching his past couple fights before the Andy Ruiz fight, he fought Povetkin, Joseph Parker, Carlos Takam, Klitschko, and that's where I want to stop right now is because I want to say I still feel that Klitschko fight took a little piece out of that man that night, and rightfully so, because that was, you talk about a barn burner. I gotta say, what the fuck? Because that fight, I'll never forget it. Both guys going down. Joshua significantly hurt by another Klitschko right hand, bang, that comes in. He gets his ass up, and that's what Joshua does. Even despite what happened with Andy Ruiz, Kev, when he got his ass up, I was like, look at him. You could tell his equilibrium was off. He was completely discombobulated. He had no legs whatsoever, but he showed balls.
I think that's what he learned, though, from those 2 fights. Because even the Klitschko fight, he gassed himself trying to knock him out. He didn't understand the pacing. Luckily, he made it out of that fight. I mean, I almost thought he was going to get knocked out because
I thought he was getting knocked out. Yeah,
he almost had Klitschko out of there, and then Klitschko knocked him down, and somehow Klitschko let him off the hook somehow.
He got too methodical. Klitschko got too analytical.
Klitschko's not really known for being a seek and destroy finisher, so
absolutely.
And Andy Ruiz caught him with a really good shot, and Andy Ruiz kind of probably had his number a little bit, and I think Joshua just never recovered in that fight. And Andy Ruiz has was a younger guy. He had a little bit of a different approach, and because he had the quick hands, he's a shorter guy. Shorter heavyweights, I notice, are usually very difficult to kind of gauge. You know, if you're a big
Oh, hell yeah.
and you got a guy kind of coming underneath you, those are punches a lot of times I think bigger heavyweights they don't see. Definitely
Absolutely.
you see a
Absolutely.
lot of taller heavyweights get knocked out against shorter kind of squat guys. They come in with shots that are very difficult to kind of gauge where they're coming from.
Absolutely, and these are the fights, people, that we're all looking forward to. You know, other fights of note running through the schedule right now. You got Triple G the night before Canelo facing someone I've never heard of. I don't know if you've ever heard of this guy, Kevin. If we've never heard of anyone, you know, combined, then we got a problem here.
Heard of him? He's getting knocked out. That's my. I'm trying to think. The only fighter that I remember in previous memory that I never heard of that went in there and just blew the guy away was Joe Smith against Andres Fonfara. You remember that?
I do remember that.
His name was Joe Smith. You saw him on a piece of paper, and you're like, this guy is just gonna get slaughtered. I mean,
what did Pedro used to always say on Ring Talk when there's a to be announced? It's like to be annihilated.
Yeah. So that's definitely one that I remember. But
Death match
that Triple G is fighting. I don't know anything about him, so I mean,
I don't know anything. I got nothing.
He's a mandatory challenger, so you know these sanctioning bodies. I mean, some guys you don't understand how they become mandatories, but obviously if a guy
I don't know
way up and he gets the shot, you know, it's you gotta dump the belt or you gotta fight the guy. And
yeah, I mean, I know people that are fighting in local gyms by name. Obviously, they're local gyms, or I could, like, you know, go online and, you know, find some kind of stream of some fight that's, you know, happening, you know, all across the world in UK at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, my time. And I kind of recognize most of the names. I'm like, who the fuck is this guy?
I think at this point, Golovkin is kind of in line for, I guess you could say, a tune-up bout. I mean, I know it's just mandatory, but he kind of deserves an easy fight, if you want to call it.
I agree with you. I agree with that.
Easy, but I mean, Canelo twice, and then that fight against Derevchenko. I mean, that was just a war. So I think
that was a hell of a fight. You're absolutely correct. That was
this
wow.
Really, that Triple G is fighting. He's, I think, 21-0, but he only has 5 knockouts. So he doesn't seem like a whole lot of a threat as far as power. 5
knockouts against Triple G ain't going to get it done, brother.
Yeah, so I think he's due kind of a tune-up or, you know, kind of a gimme fight, and then I don't know where he goes from there because I don't see Canelo going back to 160, but I think Golovkin's going to have to move up to 168, and then there's going to be some excellent fights just to kind of close the show out.
Go ahead, brother.
168 is loaded with some pretty good talent. Caleb Plant, pretty good champion, IBF champion.
Very slick boxer.
Really done a whole lot yet, but he really looks like a good upcoming younger fighter. David Benavidez, oh my God, I mean, that guy's a monster. So I would love to see him fight Canelo if Canelo can get by Smith in a couple weeks. So, I mean, we'll definitely see. I mean, there's what other guys are around that weight class you looking at, or just to kind of close out here?
I think Caleb Plant is my favorite one. I like his slickness. I like his responsibility, and I also like that he's grown in his last couple fights to be a little bit more aggressive and more confident. And the aggressiveness comes with confidence. And if you're going to be a world champion, especially out of division like you mentioned, Kev, at 168, that has a lot of talent, and even the gatekeepers at that division has a lot of talent, you're going to have confidence to do that. And he's called out publicly Canelo. He's called this man out, and that's requires a lot of balls. And real quick about Caleb Plant, his story is very touching, guys. Like, you know, not to sound like Mark Kriegel of ESPN here, but he lost a daughter at a very young age, and he continued to persevere and fight. And we started this show talking about persevering and fighting, what Earl Spence did. Yes, that was a bad decision he made, but he got himself out of the hole. You know, for in Caleb Plant's case, like he did not, cause any of that, but he still had to get himself out of a hole. And Kevin, this is the best way to close out. This is why we like fighting, because it's all about getting off the mat.
That's true. It's
Yep.
Boxing is like the truth machine.
It's the truth machine.
And
it's the absolute truth machine.
I learn a lot from this sport because when I think about the trials and stuff that I go through, and then I watch fights like Diego Corrales and Jose Luis Castillo, I'm like, I think I got it pretty good with whatever stuff I'm going through.
Jesus,
if that's what I had to do in my life to make $1, I mean, I don't know if I could.
It's impossible. It's impossible. Like, I remember Buddy McGirt
doing it for to make a living, but they're doing it for your entertainment.
But Buddy McGirt, dude, exactly. They're doing it for your entertainment, and they're there to make a living. But I remember Buddy McGirt, during the third Arturo Gatti fight with Mickey Ward, says to him, Arturo goes back to Buddy McGirt in the corner and says, "My arm is broken. My arm is broken." And he's like, Buddy says, "What you want me to do? What you want me to do?" And he's like, "I want to keep going." He's like, "Okay, baby." And he just grabs his head, starts getting him going. What the fuck? You're dealing with Mickey Ward. You fought him 3 times in pretty much a 13-month period. And now you got a broken fucking arm. Like, what sport? And then he goes down later. It's like, what an amazing, like, you see Holyfield Bo, the first fight, round 10. There's so many amazing things. Barrera Morales, what was it, Kev? Round 7, I think it was. That they had this amazing round where it was just like nonstop chaos, And then there's honorable mentions, like tons of them, like Diego Corrales, like you mentioned before, was just an amazing, he just had, like, remember Joe Goosen? You better get inside of him fucking right now with, with the mouth. It's like, this is a movie. And that's why we like boxing, people. Kevin, big ups, bro. This was awesome.
Yeah, this was a great show. And hopefully in the next week or so, we'll try to do post-fight on Canelo Smith. Hopefully that turns out to be great.
Let's do it.